The Galactic Assembly Hall stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal floors, its dome reaching so high that clouds formed near the ceiling. Representatives from 800 different species sat in their designated sections, each area modified to accommodate their unique physiological needs. The Zephyrians floated in gas-filled chambers, while the Christine delegates required platforms of pure silicon. At the center of it all, the Council of Elders maintained order over this chaotic symphony of alien voices. Ambassador Sarah Chen walked through the massive doors, her simple black uniform stark against the elaborate robes and biomechanical enhancements worn by other delegates. Behind her, the 12-member human delegation moved with quiet confidence. They had been part of this assembly for only 3 standard years, ever since humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel and stumbled into galactic civilization. The humans were considered young, primitive, and largely irrelevant by most species present. Earth's technology lagged centuries behind the major powers. Their ships were crude, their weapons outdated, and their understanding of galactic politics was laughably simple. The Veltar Empire controlled 40 systems and commanded fleets that could glass entire worlds. The hive mind of Sectorus governed through 1 trillion interconnected beings. What could one small blue planet possibly contribute to this ancient gathering? Elder Zixar of the Veltar raised one of her 4 arms, calling for order. Her metallic voice echoed through translation devices worn by every delegate. We gathered today to address the growing threat of the Devourer fleet. Our long-range sensors have detected their approach from the outer rim. At current trajectory, they will reach populated systems within 18 standard months. Murmurs of fear rippled through the assembly. The Devourers were an ancient terror, a nomadic swarm that consumed entire worlds, stripping them of all organic matter before moving on. They had last appeared 5 centuries ago, leaving behind dead systems and hollow planets. The projected path shows they will first encounter the Terran system. Elder Zixara continued, her tone carrying a note of dismissive calculation. While this is unfortunate for the humans, we must focus on protecting the core worlds. I propose immediate evacuation of all valuable assets from the Outer Rim territories. Sarah Chen stood slowly, her movement drawing attention from nearby delegates. Several species turned to observe the human representative with mild curiosity. When she spoke, her voice was calm but carried clearly through the vast chamber. Elder Zixara, you speak of evacuating the Outer Rim as if the lives there are disposable. 47 inhabited systems exist in that region. Billions of beings call those worlds home. You suggest we simply abandon them to death? The Veltar Elder's 4 eyes focused on the human. Ambassador Chen, surely you understand basic military strategy. We cannot defend every system against such a force. The Devourers number in the millions of ships. No fleet in recorded history has successfully stopped their advance. We must make rational choices about which populations we can save. And those choices happen to protect the wealthy core worlds while sacrificing the frontier territories, Sarah replied. How convenient that your homeworlds lie safely in the inner systems, while Earth and 46 other civilizations become acceptable losses. A ripple of shock passed through the assembly. Direct challenges to the Council of Elders were rare and considered highly inappropriate by galactic standards. The Hive Queen's mental voice buzzed through the translation network with disapproval. Sarah continued, undeterred by the hostile attention now focused on her delegation. We've spent 3 years in this assembly, listening to your wisdom, learning your protocols, accepting our place as junior members of galactic civilization. We've watched you debate trade routes while pirates ravage colony ships. We've seen you form committees to study the famine on Kepler 7 while children starved. Today you calmly discuss writing off 47 star systems because the math is inconvenient. Elder Thros of the Crystal Hegemony spoke, his voice like grinding stone. The humans display their inexperience with such emotional outbursts. Galactic governance requires difficult decisions based on logical analysis, not primitive sentiment. You call it logic, Sarah said, her voice growing harder. We call it cowardice dressed up in fancy words. Every species in this room achieved their power by fighting for survival at some point in their history. Now you've grown comfortable, soft, and afraid to risk what you've built to protect those who need help most. The assembly erupted in angry voices, translation devices struggling to keep pace with the cacophony of outraged alien languages. Some delegates demanded that humans be expelled for their insolence. Others called for formal sanctions against Earth's trade privileges. Sarah raised her hand, and something in her gesture made the vast chamber fall silent. You want to know what humans learned during our climb to the stars? We learned that sometimes the right choice isn't the safe choice. We learned that if you won't fight for others, nobody will fight for you when your time comes. Most importantly, we learned that bullies only understand one language. She turned to face the entire assembly, her gaze sweeping across hundreds of alien faces. Earth officially withdraws from the Galactic Assembly, effective immediately. We reject your authority, your cowardice, and your callous disregard for innocent lives. The human species will face the Devourers alone, and we'll do it without asking permission from anyone in this room. The 11 other human delegates stood in perfect unison, their movement coordinated and deliberate. Together they walked toward the exit, their footsteps echoing in the stunned silence that had fallen over the assembly. Elder Zixara found her voice first. Ambassador Chen, you cannot simply leave the assembly. There are protocols, procedures, formal withdrawal requirements. Your species lacks the military capability to face this threat alone. You're committing suicide and abandoning your responsibilities to galactic civilization. Sarah paused at the massive doors and turned back one final time. We're not abandoning our responsibilities, Elder. We're fulfilling them. Earth will stand between the Devourers and the Outer Rim worlds. When we're done, the galaxy will know exactly what humans are capable of when we're properly motivated. The doors sealed shut behind the human delegation, leaving 800 alien species to contemplate what they had just witnessed. In the silence that followed, many began to wonder if they had just made a terrible mistake. The human fleet assembled in the emptiness between stars, far from the prying sensors of galactic civilization. What had started as Earth's modest navy of 200 ships had grown into something unprecedented in the 3 weeks since the walkout from the assembly. Every human colony, every mining station, every research outpost had contributed whatever vessels they could spare. Admiral Marcus Torres stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the tactical display with grim satisfaction. 800 ships now formed the largest purely human fleet in history. They weren't pretty ships by galactic standards. No elegant curves or exotic materials marked their construction. These were vessels built for function over form, designed by a species that had learned engineering in the unforgiving environment of space. Admiral, we're receiving coded transmissions from the Outer Rim. Systems, reported Communications Officer Kim Park on 63 worlds have requested permission to evacuate their populations to our staging areas. Torres nodded grimly. Denied. We can't protect refugee fleets and fight the Devourers simultaneously. Send word that any civilian ships attempting to reach the inner systems should leave immediately. We'll do what we can to buy them time, but they need to start moving now. Captain Elena Vasquez, Torres's second in command, studied the fleet composition on her display. Marcus, I have to ask, are we actually planning to fight these things, or are we just making a statement before we die? Bit of both, I suppose, Torres admitted. But I've been reading everything we could gather about the Devourers. Every encounter, every battle report, every analysis from the past 5 centuries. The galactic powers always tried to fight them conventionally. Big fleets, advanced weapons, fancy tactics, all failed. He pulled up historical battle data on the main screen. Look at this. The Veltar Empire threw their finest battlecruisers at them. The Christine Hegemony used their reality-bending technology. The hive mind coordinated perfect tactical synchronization across 1 million ships. Every strategy failed because they all made the same mistake, which was, they tried to match the Devourers' strengths instead of exploiting their weaknesses. The Devourers are a swarm intelligence. They coordinate perfectly, adapt quickly, and overwhelm through sheer numbers. But swarm intelligences have one critical vulnerability. Vasquez raised an eyebrow. Which is? Cut off the head and the body dies. Disrupt their command structure, and the entire swarm becomes a collection of individual ships with no coordination. The problem is nobody's ever been crazy enough to punch through a 1 million-ship fleet to reach the command vessels at the center. And we're going to do exactly that? Torres smiled grimly. Elena, we're humans. Crazy is what we do best. The tactical briefing 3 hours later gathered the senior officers from every ship in the fleet. The cargo bay of the Defiance had been converted into a massive conference room, with holographic displays showing detailed intelligence about their target. The Devourer fleet operates with a simple but effective structure, Torres explained, pointing to the swarm formation on the display. Millions of smaller ships form the outer shell, designed to overwhelm enemy forces through sheer numbers. Behind them, larger vessels provide fire support and coordination. At the very center, hidden within the swarm, are the master ships. These contain the collective intelligence that controls the entire fleet. Captain Sarah Kim of the destroyer Horizon raised her hand. Sir, even if we could reach these master ships, how do we know destroying them will stop the swarm? Maybe they have backup command systems. Because humans did something no other species has ever attempted, Torres replied. We captured a devourer ship. The briefing room erupted in shocked murmurs. Several officers leaned forward in their seats, desperate for details. 6 months ago, a damaged devourer scout ship drifted into the Titan system. The crew of the mining station Cerberus managed to disable it with an improvised electromagnetic pulse. Instead of reporting it to the assembly, they contacted Earth directly. Our best xenobiologists and technicians have been studying it ever since. Torres activated a new display showing the interior of an alien vessel. The design was utterly unlike anything from known galactic civilizations. Organic curves merged with metallic structures, creating a hybrid technology that seemed almost alive. The Devourers aren't just a fleet, he continued. They're a single organism spread across millions of ships. Each vessel contains biological neural networks that connect to the collective intelligence. The master ships house the primary consciousness, the central brain that controls everything else. Destroy those and you're performing a lobotomy on the entire swarm. Captain Rodriguez from the battlecruiser Indomitable spoke up. Admiral, the math still doesn't work in our favor. 800 ships against millions? Even if our strategy is sound, we'll never survive long enough to reach the center. You're thinking like a conventional military force, Torres replied. We're not going to fight our way through the swarm. We're going to make them come to us. He changed the display to show a detailed star map of the outer rim. The Devourers are heading for the Kepler system first. 12 inhabited worlds, including a major industrial complex on Kepler-7. Instead of meeting them in open space, we're going to set up in the asteroid belt and wait. The room fell silent as officers processed this information. Captain Williams from the carrier Valkyrie finally spoke. Sir, you're talking about using the asteroids as cover. Not just cover, weapons. We've spent the last 3 weeks installing plasma charges and fusion bombs throughout the belt. When the Devourers arrive to harvest Kepler-7, they'll find themselves flying through the biggest minefield in galactic history. Torres smiled at the shocked faces around him. The beauty of human engineering is that we don't just think about how to build things. We think about how to blow them up efficiently. While the galactic powers were developing elegant energy weapons and sophisticated defense systems, we were perfecting the art of making very large explosions in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. The briefing continued for another hour, covering attack formations, communication protocols, and fallback positions. As officers returned to their ships to prepare for battle, Torres remained behind with his senior staff. Marcus, Vasquez said quietly, you know this is probably a suicide mission. Even if we succeed in stopping the Devourers, we'll likely lose most of the fleet in the process. Torres nodded grimly. I know, but that's not the point. Win or lose, the galaxy needs to see that someone was willing to stand up and fight. Maybe next time they face an impossible threat, they'll remember that a species of primitive humans chose death before abandoning innocent people to genocide. He looked out at the fleet of human ships, each one carrying hundreds of volunteers who had chosen to face certain death rather than retreat to safety. Elena, 3 years ago the galaxy saw us as backward children playing with technology we barely understood. Tomorrow they're going to learn what happens when you corner a species that evolved from predators who never learned how to quit. The Devourer fleet emerged from hyperspace like a plague of metal locusts, their ships blotting out the stars around Kepler-7. Millions of vessels ranging from fighter-sized scouts to kilometer-long battleships moved in perfect coordination, their dark hulls absorbing light as they began their approach to the inhabited worlds below. On the bridge of the UES Defiance, Admiral Torres watched the tactical display with steady nerves. The enemy fleet was even larger than intelligence estimates had suggested. His 800 ships were outnumbered by more than 3,000 to 1. Admiral, they're beginning orbital bombardment of Kepler-7, reported Tactical Officer Chen. Energy signatures suggest they're using some kind of molecular disintegration beam. The planetary defense grid is already failing. Torres nodded grimly. The evacuation of Kepler-7 had been completed 2 days ago, But the Devourers didn't know that. To them, the planet appeared to still hold billions of lives ready for harvesting. Let them waste time and energy destroying empty cities while the human fleet prepared its surprise. "Distance to the asteroid belt?" he asked. "Devourer Vanguard will reach the outer edge in 47 minutes, sir. The main body will follow approximately 15 minutes later. Signal all ships. Execute Prometheus protocol on my mark." Throughout the asteroid field, human vessels powered down to minimal systems, their hulls cooling to match the temperature of the surrounding rock. Hundreds of ships became invisible ghosts hiding among the countless asteroids, waiting for their moment to strike. Captain Elena Vasquez studied the sensor readings from her position on the destroyer Achilles. "Marcus, they're not scanning the asteroid belt. They're flying straight through like it doesn't exist." "Exactly what we hoped for," Torres replied through the secure comm channel. "The Devourers have been conquering worlds for millennia. They've never encountered serious resistance, never needed to worry about ambush tactics. Arrogance is about to cost them dearly." The first wave of Devourer ships entered the asteroid field at high speed, their formation loose and confident. These were scouts and light cruisers, sent ahead to clear any obstacles from the path of the main fleet. Their sensors swept the region perfunctorily, dismissing the asteroids as navigational hazards rather than potential threats. Torres watched the tactical display as enemy ships moved deeper into the trap. 3,000 vessels, 5,000, 10,000. The numbers kept climbing as more Devourers poured into the belt, following predetermined flight paths that would take them directly through the heart of the human ambush zone. "Proximity charges are armed and ready," reported Weapons Officer Harrison. "Fusion mines show green across the board. All ships report ready for attack. Run Zulu. Hold position," Torres commanded. "Let them get comfortable." The waiting was the hardest part. Human crews sat in silent darkness, watching thousands of enemy ships pass within weapons range. Some Devourer vessels came so close that their crews could have hit them with small arms fire. But discipline held. Every human in the fleet understood that their only chance lay in perfect timing and overwhelming surprise. Finally, the moment arrived. The main body of the Devourer fleet entered the asteroid belt, massive command ships surrounded by clouds of escorts. These were the vessels carrying the collective intelligence, the brain of the swarm that controlled millions of ships across multiple star systems. "All ships. This is Admiral Torres," he broadcast on the secure channel. "Today we show the galaxy what happens when you threaten human space. Today we prove that courage matters more than numbers. All ships execute Prometheus protocol. Light them up." The asteroid belt exploded into chaos as thousands of hidden charges detonated simultaneously. Fusion bombs disguised as ordinary rocks vaporized Devourer ships in brilliant flashes of nuclear fire. Plasma charges carved through enemy formations like invisible swords, leaving trails of destruction in their wake. The human fleet emerged from hiding with engines at full power, their weapons blazing. 800 ships struck the confused and scattered enemy formation from dozens of different angles, targeting command and control vessels with devastating precision. The UES Defiance led the charge, her main guns hammering a Devourer command cruiser until its hull buckled and burst. Around her, destroyers and frigates darted between the larger enemy ships like wolves attacking a herd, their weapons seeking vulnerable points in alien armor. "Direct hit on target designation Alpha 7, reported Chen. "That's a command ship down." Reading massive neural feedback through the local swarm network, Torres smiled grimly as he watched sections of the Devourer fleet lose coordination, their perfect formations dissolving into chaos as communication links failed. That's what happens when you put all your eggs in one basket. "Navigation, plot a course for the master ships. All vessels form up on the Defiance. We're going right through the center." The human fleet punched through the disorganized Devourer formation like a spear thrust. Ships that had hidden among the asteroids now revealed their true nature as highly mobile predators designed for exactly this kind of brutal close-quarters combat. Human vessels weren't elegant, but they were fast, tough, and absolutely ruthless in their application of firepower. Captain Rodriguez aboard the Indomitable found himself surrounded by enemy vessels, their weapons tearing at his ship's armor. Instead of retreating, he ordered maximum power to the engines and rammed directly through a Devourer battleship, his reinforced hull cutting the alien vessel in half. "All ships, this is Rodriguez. Ramming attacks are highly effective against these targets. Their hulls weren't designed to withstand kinetic impact, Recommend close-range engagement protocols. The message spread through the human fleet, and suddenly the battle transformed from a conventional space engagement into something resembling an ancient naval boarding action. Human ships closed to point-blank range, using their superior maneuverability to avoid enemy fire while delivering devastating close-range attacks. But the Devourers were beginning to adapt. The swarm intelligence recognized the threat and began coordinating a response. Millions of ships throughout the system turned toward the asteroid belt, converging on the human fleet's position with lethal intent. "Admiral, we're reading massive enemy reinforcements inbound," reported Vasquez. 3 million ships moving to surround us. At current engagement rates, we'll be overwhelmed in 12 minutes. Torres studied the tactical display, calculating distances and firing solutions. The master ships were still 8 minutes away, protected by increasingly dense formations of enemy vessels. Meanwhile, the walls of the trap were closing around his fleet. All ships abandoned stealth protocols. Maximum burn for the center. We're running out of time. He switched to the fleet-wide channel. "This is Admiral Torres to all human vessels. The enemy knows we're here now and they're coming in force. We have 8 minutes to reach the master ships before the swarm surrounds us. 8 minutes to prove that humans don't back down from impossible odds." The human fleet accelerated toward the center of the Devourer formation, their engines burning at dangerous levels as they raced against time in overwhelming numbers. Behind them, millions of enemy ships gave chase, their weapons reaching out across the void to destroy the audacious humans who dared to challenge the ancient terror of the galaxy. The real battle was just beginning. Space around the human fleet became a hellscape of energy beams and exploding ships as millions of Devourer vessels converged on their position. The UES Defiance shuddered under repeated hits, her armor glowing white-hot from the constant bombardment. Around her, the human formation compressed tighter as ships fell to the overwhelming enemy fire. "Hull breach on Deck 7, reported Damage Control Chief Santos. "We've lost main reactor 2 and the port weapons array is offline. Structural integrity down to 60%. Admiral Torres gripped his command chair as another barrage shook the ship. "How long to the master ships?" 4 minutes at current speed, Navigation Officer Kim replied. "But sir, we're losing ships faster than projected. Current fleet strength down to 612 vessels and falling." Torres watched the tactical display as human ships died around him. The destroyer Prometheus vanished in a brilliant flash as enemy fire overwhelmed her shields. The cruiser Achilles fell out of formation, her engines destroyed, her crew fighting a hopeless rearguard action against dozens of Devourer vessels. But the human fleet pressed forward, their weapons carving a bloody path through the enemy swarm. Every ship lost took down 10 or 20 Devourer vessels in return, their crews fighting with the desperate fury of people who knew they were already dead. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Assembly," Communications Officer Park announced. Torres almost laughed. "Put it through." Elder Zixara's metallic voice filled the bridge. "Admiral Torres, cease this madness immediately. The Assembly has voted to offer the Devourers safe passage through the Outer Rim in exchange for sparing the core worlds. Your unauthorized military action is endangering delicate negotiations." "You're negotiating with them?" Torres asked incredulously. "They're a swarm intelligence bent on consuming all organic life. What exactly are you offering them? A schedule of which worlds to devour first? The Assembly has determined that sacrifice of the frontier territories is necessary for the greater good of galactic civilization. Order your fleet to withdraw immediately, or face permanent expulsion from the galactic community." Torres cut the transmission without responding. Around him, the bridge crew worked frantically to keep their ship operational as enemy fire continued to pound their defenses. "Sir, the Byzantium and the Spartan have broken through the enemy outer shell," reported Chen. "They're engaging the master ship escorts directly." On the tactical display, Torres could see the 2 human battle cruisers trading fire with massive Devourer command vessels. The aliens were larger and more heavily armed, but the human ships were faster and more maneuverable. They darted around the ponderous enemy vessels like fighters attacking bombers. "All remaining ships, focus fire on the master ship formation. Ignore everything else. We came here to cut off the head of the snake, and that's exactly what we're going to do." The human fleet's formation collapsed as individual ships broke off to engage the enemy, according to their own tactical judgment. Discipline gave way to controlled chaos as captains made split-second decisions about targets and tactics. This wasn't the coordinated perfection of a galactic fleet. This was a pack of predators in the final moments of a desperate hunt. Captain Sarah Kim's destroyer Horizon rammed through a formation of devourer escorts, her reinforced prow crushing alien hulls like an ancient battering ram. Her ship emerged on the other side badly damaged but still functional, her weapons targeting the nearest master ship with everything she had. "This is Kim to all ships," she broadcast. "Ramming attacks are disrupting their neural networks. Every time we physically damage a command vessel, we're seeing cascade failures through the local swarm. Keep hitting them hard and close." The battle became a brutal melee as human ships closed to point-blank range with the master ships. These massive vessels were the size of cities, their hulls bristling with weapons and defensive systems. But they had been designed to coordinate a swarm from a safe distance, not to fight desperate enemies willing to ram them at full speed. The UES Defiance engaged a master ship directly, her main guns pouring fire into the alien vessel's command section. Torres could see the biological neural networks through gaps in the damaged hull, pulsing with electrical activity as the collective intelligence tried to maintain control over its dying fleet. "Neural cascade detected in Master Ship Gamma," reported Chen. "Approximately 200,000 swarm vessels have gone dark. Their coordination is breaking down, but the victory came at a terrible cost. Half the human fleet had been destroyed in the charge to reach the center. Ships that had fought their way through millions of enemies now died under concentrated fire from the master ship's defensive systems. The battlecruiser Indomitable, her hull glowing from repeated hits, made a final desperate ramming attack against Master Ship Alpha. Captain Rodriguez's voice came through the comm one last time. "All ships, this is Rodriguez. It's been an honor serving with you. Tell Earth we went out swinging." The Indomitable struck the master ship's neural core at full speed, her fusion reactors overloading on impact. The explosion tore through both vessels, creating a brief new star that illuminated the battlefield. The effect on the Devourer swarm was immediate and catastrophic. Millions of ships throughout the system suddenly went silent, their crews cut off from the collective intelligence that had controlled them for millennia. Formations that had moved with perfect coordination moments before now drifted aimlessly, their individual crews confused and directionless. "Admiral, we're reading massive system failures throughout the enemy fleet," Chen reported with excitement. "Neural networks are collapsing across the entire swarm. Ship-to-ship coordination has dropped to near zero." Torres smiled grimly as he watched the tactical display. The plan had worked. By targeting the collective intelligence directly, the humans had turned the Devourer's greatest strength into their fatal weakness. But the battle wasn't over. 3 master ships remained functional, and they were adapting to the threat. Instead of relying on swarm coordination, they began operating their remaining vessels in smaller, independent groups. The adaptation was slower and less efficient, but it was still deadly. "Sir, incoming transmission from Master Ship Beta," Park announced. "It's not using standard galactic languages. This appears to be some kind of direct neural communication. Put it through." A voice unlike anything Torres had ever heard filled the bridge. It was the sound of a million minds speaking in unison, ancient and cold and utterly alien. "Small destroyers," the voice said. "You have damaged us. This was not anticipated in our calculations. We have consumed 1,000 civilizations across 10,000 years. None have reached our core vessels. How did creatures so primitive accomplish what advanced species could not?" Torres stood up, addressing the alien intelligence directly. "Because you made the same mistake everyone else makes when they first encounter humans. You assumed that advanced technology makes you superior. You forgot that sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one with nothing left to lose." The alien voice was silent for a moment, processing this information. "You speak of predation. We understand this concept. We are the ultimate predator. We consume all organic matter to fuel our expansion across the galaxy. You are simply food that has temporarily delayed its consumption." "Wrong again," Torres replied. "You're parasites. You've been feeding on civilizations that grew soft and comfortable, species that forgot how to fight for their survival. You've never faced a predator species that evolved by learning how to kill things bigger and stronger than themselves. This distinction is irrelevant. Our remaining forces still outnumber your fleet by several thousand to 1. Your victory is temporary. We will adapt and overcome." Torres smiled coldly. "Feel free to try, but you should know something about humans before you do. We're the species that looked at every natural predator on our planet and decided we could do better. We're the ones who took fire and metal and turned them into weapons that could kill gods. Most importantly, we're the species that never learned when to quit. He switched to the fleet-wide channel. All remaining ships, this is Torres. We've proven our point, but we're not done yet. 3 master ships are still operational, and the galaxy is watching to see what happens next. Let's give them a show they'll never forget. The remaining human fleet, now reduced to fewer than 300 ships, regrouped around the burning wreckage of the first master ship. Around them, millions of devourer vessels drifted in confused clusters, their crews struggling to function without the collective intelligence that had guided them for millennia. Admiral Torres studied the tactical situation with grim satisfaction. 3 master ships remained operational, but they had pulled back to defensive positions, surrounding themselves with the most intact portions of their fleet. The aliens were learning caution, perhaps for the first time in their existence. "Sir, we're receiving multiple transmissions from across the galaxy," Communications Officer Park reported. "It appears news of our engagement has spread. The Veltar Empire, the Christine hegemony, even the hive mind are all monitoring our battle." "Good," Torres replied. "Let them watch. Let them see what happens when someone finally decides to stand up to the monsters." Captain Elena Vasquez, now commanding the destroyer Artemis after her previous ship was destroyed, opened a channel. "Marcus, our ammunition reserves are down to 30%. Fusion torpedoes are completely depleted. If we're going to take out the remaining master ships, we'll need a different approach." Torres nodded. He had expected this moment. "Elena, how many ships do we have left with functional reactors but compromised life support or weapon systems?" "Approximately 40 vessels, sir. Most took heavy damage, but their cores are still stable." "Perfect. Signal all damaged ships to prepare for Operation Samson. Full reactor overload, maximum yield." The bridge fell silent as the implications of his order sank in. Operation Samson was a last resort tactic that had been discussed but never implemented. It involved using damaged ships as guided fusion bombs, with their crews riding them all the way to the target. "Admiral," Chief Santos said quietly, "that's asking 40 crews to commit suicide." "I'm not asking them to do anything," Torres replied. "I'm giving them the opportunity to make their deaths count for something. Every captain in this fleet volunteered for a mission they knew was suicide. The only question was whether we'd die uselessly or take the enemy with us." The responses came back within minutes. All 40 damaged ships volunteered for the suicide mission. Their captains knew they were already dead. The only choice was how to die. Captain Williams aboard the heavily damaged carrier Valkyrie was the first to respond. "Admiral, this is Williams. My ship can't fight anymore, but she can still fly. It would be my honor to ram Master Ship Beta straight to hell." Similar messages came from across the fleet. Ships with names like Thermopylae, Alamo, and Bastonia, vessels named after humanity's most famous last stands, prepared for one final charge against impossible odds. All ships executing Operation Samson. This is Admiral Torres. You are the bravest souls humanity has ever produced. Your sacrifice will be remembered as long as our species exists. Give them hell. The damaged human vessels broke formation, accelerating toward the 3 remaining master ships on intercept courses. Behind them, the functional ships of the fleet provided cover fire, engaging the devourer escorts that tried to intercept the suicide runs. The first ship to reach its target was the destroyer Phoenix, captained by Commander Lisa Chen. Her vessel had lost most of its weapons and life support, but her engines still functioned. She piloted her ship directly into the neural core of Master Ship Gamma, her reactor overloading at the moment of impact. The explosion was visible across the entire system, a brief supernova that marked the death of both the destroyer and the alien intelligence it destroyed. The effect on the surrounding devourer fleet was immediate. Another 1,000,000 ships went dark as their neural connections severed, but the remaining master ships had learned from the previous attacks. They began coordinating their defensive fire, creating overlapping fields of destruction that claimed ship after ship before they could reach their targets. The carrier Valkyrie, heavily damaged but still flying, fought her way through a wall of enemy fire toward Master Ship Beta. Captain Williams' voice came through the comm as his ship took hit after hit. "This is Williams. Hull breach on all decks. Life support failing. But we're still flying and we're still coming for you." The Valkyrie's flight deck had been torn open by enemy fire, her fighter bays exposed to space. But Williams continued his charge, using the last of his ship's power to maintain course toward the master ship's command center. All human vessels, this is Williams. It's been an honor serving with you. Long live Earth. Long live humanity. The carrier struck Master Ship Beta's neural core in a cascade of nuclear fire, her death taking down another section of the Devourer fleet. The explosion was so intense that it damaged nearby human ships, but they pressed forward without hesitation. Torres watched as his fleet died around him, each ship's sacrifice buying precious seconds for the survivors to close with the final master ship. The mathematics of the battle were simple and brutal. 2 master ships down, 1 remaining. Fewer than 200 human ships left to finish the job. Admiral, incoming transmission from the Galactic Assembly, Park announced. Not now, Torres replied. Sir, I think you need to hear this. It's not from the Council of Elders. It's from individual member species. Torres paused. Put it through. The voice that filled the bridge belonged to Captain Thexara of the Veltar Imperial Navy. Admiral Torres, this is the starship Retribution. We are watching your battle. Your species displays courage we had thought extinct in the galaxy. Request permission to assist your attack. Before Torres could respond, another voice joined the channel. This one belonged to Squadron Leader Zinn of the Christine Defense Force. Admiral Torres, this is Crystal Squadron 7. We have been monitoring your engagement. Your tactics are impressive. We would consider it an honor to fight alongside humans. More voices joined the communication. Ship captains from dozens of different species, all requesting permission to join the battle. Torres realized that the galaxy was indeed watching, and what they saw was changing their minds about humanity's place in the cosmic order. All galactic vessels, this is Admiral Torres, he replied. We appreciate the offer, but this is humanity's fight. We started this to prove a point, and we're going to finish it ourselves. Admiral, came the voice of Hive Commander Zach. With respect, this battle stopped being about proving points when you destroyed the first master ship. You have shown the galaxy that the Devourers can be defeated. Now let us help you finish what you started. Torres looked around his damaged bridge at the faces of his crew. These people had followed him into certain death without question. They had earned the right to finish what they started. Negative, all vessels. Humanity stands alone. We walked out of the assembly alone. We'll finish this fight alone. Admiral, Captain Thexara replied. You misunderstand our intent. We are not offering to help you as representatives of our governments. We are requesting permission to fight as individuals who recognize courage when we see it. The assembly may have failed you, but there are still those of us who remember what honor means. Torres felt something stir in his chest, an emotion he hadn't expected to feel in the middle of a suicide mission. Hope. All galactic vessels, he said finally. Welcome to the party. Let's go kill ourselves a god. The battlefield transformed as ships from across the galaxy emerged from hyperspace, their hulls bearing the markings of dozens of different civilizations. They came not as representatives of their governments, but as individual warriors who had witnessed humanity's sacrifice and chosen to join the fight. The Veltar battlecruiser Retribution dropped out of hyperspace first, her massive hull scarred from countless battles. Behind her came Crystal Squadron 7, their ships gleaming like living gemstones as they formed up alongside the battered human fleet. Hive vessels appeared in perfect formation, followed by ships from species Torres had never even heard of. Admiral, we're reading over 300 additional vessels, reported Chen. Energy signatures suggest these are all frontline military units, not civilian ships. Torres smiled grimly. The galactic military had been watching the battle, and individual captains had made their own decisions about whether to join the fight. Signal all vessels, human and allied. Final assault on Master Ship Alpha begins in 5 minutes. This is our last chance to end this threat permanently. The final master ship had positioned itself at the center of the remaining Devourer formation, surrounded by nearly 1 million escort vessels. It was larger than the previous 2, its hull stretching for kilometers and bristling with weapon systems that could destroy entire fleets. The collective intelligence had learned from the earlier attacks and was prepared for anything the combined fleet could throw at it. Captain Elena Vasquez opened a channel from the Artemis. Marcus, the alien formation is too dense. We'll never punch through that many ships to reach the master ship's core. Yes, we will, Torres replied, because we're not going through them. We're going under them. He activated the tactical display, showing the three-dimensional battlefield around the master ship. While the Devourers had positioned their escorts in a perfect sphere around their command vessel, they had concentrated most of their firepower above and below, expecting attacks from the galactic plane. All ships, prepare for dive attack pattern Omega. We're going to use the gravity well of that dead planet to slingshot around and approach from directly below the formation. The Devourers won't expect an attack vector that requires us to fly through a planetary debris field. Captain Thexera of the Retribution spoke up. Admiral, that debris field is dense enough to tear apart any ship that attempts to navigate it at combat speed. Then we better be very good pilots, Torres replied. All human ships take point. Our vessels were designed for asteroid belt operations. We'll clear a path for our allies. The combined fleet dove toward the shattered remains of Kepler-4, a world the Devourers had consumed during their initial assault. The planet had been stripped of all organic matter, leaving behind a maze of metallic debris and crystalline fragments that would challenge even the most skilled navigators. The UES Defiance led the formation into the debris field, her pilot threading the massive ship between chunks of planetary crust with precision that bordered on the impossible. Behind her, human vessels spread out in a protective formation, using their superior maneuverability to guide the larger galactic ships through the safest paths. Contact in 30 seconds, reported Navigation Officer Kim. Enemy fleet is beginning to react to our approach vector, but they're having trouble repositioning their formations quickly enough. Torres watched as Devourer vessels tried to redeploy to meet the unexpected attack angle, but their massive formations were too unwieldy to change direction rapidly. The collective intelligence had optimized for overwhelming firepower, not tactical flexibility. All ships, weapons free. Target the master ship's neural core. Everything else is secondary. The combined fleet erupted from the debris field like an avalanche of metal and fury. Human ships led the charge, their weapons blazing as they carved through the Devourer formations. Behind them, galactic vessels added their firepower to the assault, energy weapons and exotic matter projectors tearing through alien hulls. But the final master ship was not defenseless. Its hull-mounted weapon systems unlike anything the previous vessels had carried, reality-distorting cannons that could unmake matter at the quantum level. Ships simply ceased to exist as the master ship's primary weapons tracked across the battlefield. The Christine vessel, perfection vanished in a flash of impossible light as one of the reality cannons found its mark. The Hive Destroyer Collective Purpose suffered the same fate seconds later, its crew of 1,000 minds silenced in an instant. All ships, evasive maneuvers, Torres commanded. Those weapons have limited firing rates. Keep moving and don't give them stationary targets. The battle became a desperate dance as ships weaved through the Devourer formation, dodging reality-distorting beams while trying to close the distance to their target. The master ship's escort vessels added their own firepower to the chaos, creating overlapping fields of destruction that claimed ship after ship. But the combined fleet pressed forward with the same desperate courage that had brought them this far. When the human destroyer Leonidas lost her engines to enemy fire, her captain ordered ramming speed and drove his ship directly into a Devourer battleship. When the Veltar cruiser Honor's Edge found herself surrounded by enemy vessels, she overloaded her reactor and took down half a dozen alien ships with her death. Torres found himself in direct combat with the master ship's defensive systems, the Defiance trading fire with weapons that could reshape reality itself. His ship's armor glowed white-hot under the alien assault, but she held together through sheer engineering stubbornness and the determination of her crew. Hull breach on decks 4 through 7, reported Santos. We've lost main engines. Maneuvering on emergency thrusters only. Distance to target, 800 meters and closing. But sir, our weapons can't penetrate that hull. The neural core is too deep inside the ship's superstructure. Torres smiled grimly. Then we do this the old-fashioned way. All hands, prepare for ramming impact. Chief Santos, prepare the reactor for emergency overload on my command. Around him, the bridge crew worked frantically to prepare for their final attack. These people had followed him across the galaxy to fight an impossible enemy, and they were about to complete their mission in the only way left available to them. Admiral, came a voice over the comm. It was Captain Thexera from the Retribution. Our ship is heavily damaged but still functional. Request permission to provide cover for your final attack run. Permission granted, Captain. It's been an honor fighting alongside you. The Veltar battlecruiser positioned herself between the Defiance and the master ship's defensive weapons, her hull taking tremendous punishment as she shielded the human vessel's approach. Other galactic ships joined the sacrificial effort, forming a protective corridor that would allow Torres to reach his target. Admiral Torres, came another voice. This one belonged to the master ship's collective intelligence, speaking directly into his mind through some form of telepathic communication. You have exceeded all parameters of our predictive models. Your species displays characteristics we have not encountered in 10,000 years of galactic conquest. Glad we could surprise you, Torres replied grimly as his ship closed the final distance to the master ship's hull. We offer terms for surrender. Cease this attack and we will spare your homeworld. Continue, and we will ensure that Earth dies slowly, its population harvested over centuries rather than days. Torres laughed as he gave Santos the signal to overload the reactor. You still don't understand humans, do you? We don't negotiate with monsters. We kill them. The UES Defiance struck the master ship's neural core at full speed, her overloading reactor turning both vessels into a brief new star that lit up the battlefield. The explosion was so massive that ships throughout the system felt the shockwave, and when the light faded, nothing remained of either vessel but expanding plasma and debris. The effect on the Devourer fleet was immediate and final. Across the entire system, millions of ships went dark as the last collective intelligence died. Without the neural networks that had connected them for millennia, individual Devourer crews found themselves alone and confused, unable to coordinate or even communicate with each other. The greatest threat the galaxy had ever known had been destroyed by a species that most civilizations considered primitive and irrelevant. The humans had proven that courage and determination could overcome any technological advantage, that sometimes the most important quality in a warrior was the simple refusal to give up. But the cost had been enormous. Of the 800 ships that had begun the battle, fewer than 50 remained operational. The human fleet had been virtually annihilated in their moment of greatest triumph. The aftermath of the battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Where once millions of Devourer ships had moved with perfect coordination, now countless vessels drifted aimlessly through space. Their crews, suddenly cut off from the collective intelligence that had guided them for millennia, were lost and confused, many shutting down their ship's systems and simply waiting for death. Captain Elena Vasquez, now the senior surviving human officer aboard the destroyer Artemis, surveyed the battlefield with exhausted eyes. Of the 800 ships that had begun this impossible mission, only 43 remained operational. The human fleet had been virtually destroyed in their moment of greatest victory. Status report, she requested, wearily. 17 ships report. Major damage but remain spaceworthy, reported Lieutenant Harrison, who had assumed communications duties after the original officer was killed. 26 ships have minor damage and full operational capability. We're reading no active Devourer vessels in the immediate area. And the other galactic ships? Approximately 150 vessels remain from the forces that joined us. Captain Thexara's ship Retribution is still functional, as are most of the Christine Squadron. They're requesting orders. Vasquez almost laughed at the irony. The galactic powers who had dismissed humanity as primitive children were now asking what to do next. Signal all ships. Begin rescue operations for any survivors in the debris field, human and alien alike. Across the system, the work of recovery began. Ships that had been enemies hours before now worked together to save lives from the wreckage. Devourer survivors, suddenly freed from their collective consciousness, found themselves experiencing individual thought for the first time in their species' recorded history. Many were in shock, unable to process the concept of existing as separate beings. 3 days later, the Galactic Assembly reconvened in emergency session. The great hall that had witnessed humanity's dramatic departure now buzzed with urgent conversations as representatives tried to process what had occurred in the Kepler system. Elder Zixara called for order, her forearms raised to quiet the chaotic assembly. We gathered to address the unprecedented events in the Outer Rim. The human fleet has somehow succeeded in destroying the Devourer threat, though at enormous cost to themselves. The question before us, interrupted Elder Thros of the Christine Hegemony, is how to respond to this development. The humans acted outside Assembly authority, violated numerous treaties regarding military action, and caused significant diplomatic complications with their unauthorized war. A new voice cut through the assembly, clear and strong despite the distance. Captain Elena Vasquez appeared on the main communication screen, broadcasting from the bridge of the Artemis. "Elder Thros," she said, "with all due respect, you can take your treaties and your diplomatic complications and shove them into the nearest black hole." The assembly erupted in shocked murmurs. Several delegates demanded that the transmission be cut, but Elder Zixara signaled for silence. "Captain Vasquez, you address the Galactic Assembly. Show proper respect for this institution." "Respect?" Vasquez laughed bitterly. 3 weeks ago, you were ready to sacrifice 47 star systems to save your own comfortable lives. You called it logical necessity. We call it cowardice. Now you want to debate whether we followed proper procedures while cleaning up the mess you were too afraid to handle yourselves. Elder Zixara's voice carried a note of warning. "Captain, Earth's continued. Membership in the galactic community depends on your species' willingness to accept legitimate authority and follow established protocols. Then, Earth formally rejects membership in the galactic community," Vasquez replied without hesitation. "We have no interest in belonging to an organization run by cowards who hide behind committees while innocent people die." The announcement sent shockwaves through the assembly. No species had ever voluntarily withdrawn from galactic civilization before. The economic and technological benefits were too valuable to abandon. But before Elder Zixara could respond, another voice interrupted the proceedings. Captain Thexara of the Veltar Empire stood in his delegation's section, his forearms crossed in a gesture of formal declaration. "The Veltar Empire hereby withdraws from the Galactic Assembly, effective immediately. We choose to stand with the humans who showed us what courage looks like." The crystal chime of Squadron Leader Zin joining the conversation followed. "The Christine Hegemony seconds this withdrawal. We will not remain part of an institution that values procedure over principle." One by one, delegations began standing and announcing their withdrawal from the assembly. The species whose ships had fought alongside humanity in the final battle led the exodus, but they were joined by others who had been inspired by the humans' example. Within an hour, nearly half the assembly had formally withdrawn their membership. The ancient institution that had governed galactic civilization for millennia was collapsing as species after species chose to follow the example set by a group of primitive humans who had refused to abandon their principles. "Elder," Zixara called desperately for order as her carefully constructed political system dissolved around her. "This is madness. Without the assembly, there will be chaos. Trade will collapse, communication will fail, territorial disputes will explode into warfare." Captain Vasquez's image smiled grimly from the main screen. "Maybe chaos is exactly what this galaxy needs. Maybe it's time for species to start making their own decisions instead of hiding behind the safety of committee votes and diplomatic protocols." 6 months later, Captain Vasquez stood in the observation deck of the newly constructed space station Defiance, built in orbit around Earth as a symbol of humanity's independence. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see ships from dozens of different species coming and going, their crews working together on projects that would have been impossible under the old assembly system. The Devourer survivors had been relocated to a series of worlds in the Outer Rim, where they were slowly learning to exist as individuals rather than parts of a collective. Many had chosen to work alongside the species they had once tried to consume, their unique perspectives proving valuable in scientific research and technological development. Ambassador Sarah Chen, recently returned from establishing diplomatic relations with the former assembly members who had chosen independence, joined Vasquez at the observation window. "Any word from the assembly?" Vasquez asked. "They're still meeting, still debating, still trying to figure out how to maintain control over the species that remained," Chen replied. "About 200 civilizations stayed with them, mostly the ones too dependent on the central bureaucracy to function independently. And the others? Thriving. Turns out most species are perfectly capable of managing their own affairs when they're not constantly seeking permission from a committee of elders who haven't made a real decision in centuries." Vasquez nodded, watching as a human cargo vessel docked alongside a Christine research ship. The galaxy had indeed changed, perhaps permanently. The ancient order that had prioritized stability over justice, procedure over principle, was giving way to something new and chaotic and vibrant. "Sarah, Do you think we did the right thing? Walking away from the assembly, starting that fight with the Devourers. Shen was quiet for a moment, considering the question. Elena, 47 star systems are still alive because we refuse to accept that some lives matter more than others. The Devourer threat has been eliminated permanently. Half the galaxy has rediscovered what it means to make their own choices instead of following the safest possible path. She paused, then smiled. Besides, we proved something important. We showed the galaxy that humans don't back down from impossible odds, that we fight for what's right even when it costs us everything. That's a lesson worth teaching regardless of the price. Vasquez nodded, watching the bustling traffic around the station. Earth had paid an enormous price for its principles, losing most of its fleet and thousands of brave souls. But those sacrifices had accomplished something remarkable. They had reminded the galaxy that courage still mattered, that some things were worth fighting for no matter what the odds. The human species had stormed out of the Galactic Assembly in defiance of an ancient order, and the galaxy had watched in fear as they faced impossible odds alone. But when the battle was over, when the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known lay defeated in the void, it wasn't fear that filled the hearts of those who had witnessed humanity's sacrifice. It was respect. And for the first time in millennia, hope that maybe courage and principle could still triumph over comfortable cowardice and bureaucratic inaction. The humans had shown them all what it meant to stand for something greater than their own survival. The galaxy would never be the same,